In the racial contract, you describe how white violence is at the core of our white supremacist society. It is this violence combined with ideological conditioning that allows this power structure to stay in place. You specifically mentioned the police, the penal system, and the military as the main institutions that perpetuate this violence. Recently, there's been a growing movement to defund the police. Many people feel that those resources would be better used if allocated to more community-based programs, including mental health services, education, de-escalation workers, and other social services. How do you see this movement in terms of state-sanctioned white violence? Will it help reduce white violence, or will the state simply create a new form of white violence to maintain its control?
I think the slogan is really unfortunate because I think the natural response most people would have, if they don't know anything about the actual policy recommendations being put forward, is that this means you dissolve, police departments altogether. So I think, defund, is perhaps, not the best way. Certainly reallocate, reprioritize the allocation of funds, demilitarize the police, sort of make sure there's much more civilian oversight, that, policemen who commit, these kinds of actions we see are not sort of reflexively protected by police unions. So there are a number of, measures that, certainly I think would make a big difference. It's not something I've studied in any detail, so I can only sort of refer people to those voices, in the criminal justice system have written on this. But I do agree that there's certainly better ways to sort of, spend, the billions of dollars that are, involved in this. If you think of the war on drugs, for example, which was a sort of disastrous failure, and, how much, how much more worthwhile it would have been had those billions, or who knows, maybe even trillions of dollars been put into other kind of programs. Right. But it sort of links up with the fact that historically, given the nature of the society of the US is, the police have had this function. It's not their only function. They do also have a crime fighting function, but part of the function has been to maintain the subordination of, those racial groups at the bottom of the ladder. And that's, has been very much very much deeply embedded in the way these are, if you look at people who have sort of written histories of the policing function. I read in the New York Times book review this morning, for example, a book that just came out on the Texas Rangers and the kinds of things that they did vis-a-vis, the Mexican, and the Chicano population, late 19th century, early 20th century. So this is the kind of history that, many of these organizations have. So it's sort of deeply embedded in the culture. So there, the points that have been made in terms of, cameras, in terms of sensitivity training and so forth. But there's this very deep cultural thing in, how these organizations function. And also, as I say, the sort of, larger social body in which they're operating. And you made the point earlier about it's not being sort of, the essential thing to focus on the whiteness of the people. So think of the Freddie Gray, what happened to Freddie Gray, for example. Most or all of those officers were actually African American, the people who it's alleged gave him the rough ride, which ended up in his spine being severed. So it has to do with the kind of role you're taking up, which in turn is related to the function of the police and the social system as a whole. So these very deep questions have to be raised, and that's why you have to make an appeal to the white majority to see that it's not the case that people are suggesting that we don't need a body to protect citizens, because there is crime, there is murder, there's rape, there's all robberies, all kinds of terrible crimes. So the police do have a necessary function. The idea is to sort of separate that legitimate function from the illegitimate function that unfortunately it has historically had.
Right. Okay. Okay. Good. It's good to get some, get down in the weeds of this a little bit and see how, some of the aspects that people may not really be discussing in this broader conversation that we're having.